teach music theory here at LSU. Before I say anything else, I'd just like to acknowledge that so many of the young musicians here, whom I've known for so many years, will not be playing with us anymore because they're done. They're ready to graduate, completed their degrees, and we're very sorry to see them go, but we're very proud of them all. So I'd just like to So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the work you're about to hear. Ninth Symphony in D minor, Beethoven. The aesthetic of Viennese classicism is an aesthetic of distinct edges, clear delineations between melody and accompaniment, foreground and background, theme and development, light and dark, home and away, up and down. But Beethoven's relationship with classicism and its distinct edges was complicated, especially by the time you get to this very late work. The Ninth Symphony begins with the most indistinct edge of any comparable work. We begin as silence gives way to a kind of primordial soup consisting of the open fifth, A natural and E natural, sustained by the second violin. Second violins, can I have y'all just play, just jam on that A and E? Just so they get a sense of that. Great, thank you. That's all you get at the beginning. Please hold your applause. That could mean anything. That's just it's not yet a harmony. It's simply a sound. Eventually, it comes to suggest the dominant harmony of the work's D minor tonality, but we have no way of knowing that at the start. It simply emerges from the silence. In fact, this is an entire symphony about emerging, about becoming, not being. Rather than starting with a well-formed, well-delineated theme, the first movement's opening ideas eventually become a theme. Rather than beginning as a choral symphony, the work becomes a choral symphony over the course of its 4 movements. That's why our chorus will be, and our soloist will be doing a lot of standing tonight before they get to do their singing. It's enriched and made vast through its inclusion of various structures, topics, and textures imported from outside the symphonic tradition. From opera, from the music of J.S. Bach, even from marching band music of the 18th century. Consider the second movement scherzo. Beethoven had almost single-handedly invented the scherzo by turning the conventional symphonic minuet up to 11. Here, he explodes the genre by making it sound as though it had swallowed a rondo, or perhaps a sonata. And consider the third movement set of slow variations that eventually gels into something else as the framing variation process falls away. The poet and playwright Friedrich Schiller wrote An die Freude, the poem known to us as the Ode to Joy, in 1785 as a celebration of friendship, spiritual kinship, and political liberation. Schiller was a close associate of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the great statesman of German literature and culture. Together with a few other poets and playwrights, they met in the city of Weimar and debated the big questions of morality, history, art, girls, I'm guessing, and the human condition, founding a movement known as Weimar Classicism. This group of thinkers and artists stood at the pinnacle of the European Enlightenment, espousing sometimes dangerous opinions about the political and social order. In place of the stratified social hierarchy of pre-revolutionary Europe, they espoused the universal brotherhood of man. In place of the despotic monarchies that ruled over the continent, they proposed the rule of law. In place of the strictures of organized religion, they proposed scientific inquiry. Beethoven fell in love with the ideals of the Weimar classicists as a young man, and specifically with Schiller's An die Freude. In January of 1793, there were already reports that the up-and-coming young composer was working on a musical setting of the Ode. As it turned out, Beethoven took a little while to complete the task. Setting it aside a number of times, he finally completed his musical realization of the Ode, not in 1793, not in 1794, not in 1795, but just over 30 years later. Beethoven's involvement with his text, therefore, brackets almost his entire creative life. Both the poem itself and the ideals it expresses were to guide Beethoven through over 3 decades of turbulence and personal hardship. In 1817, the Philharmonic Society of London invited Beethoven to compose 2 symphonies to be premiered in the British capital that season. Beethoven was unable to complete this commission, but it did provide the impetus for work on a new symphony, the 9th, which he decided would, at long last, include a choral setting of Schiller's Ode. Nobody had done this before. Nobody had put a chorus in a symphony. This was just, you had to be Beethoven to think you could do this. He didn't really get to work on the symphony until 1823 and didn't complete it until the following March, at which point the composer, feeling neglected by the Viennese public, who were then in love with Rossini's operas, threatened to hold the premiere in Berlin. His supporters in Vienna begged him not to do so, with the result that the choral symphony was first performed in the Kirchner Theater in Vienna. Beethoven adapted Schiller's Ode to fit his own needs for an expansive, endlessly unfolding, intensely developmental and philosophical final movement. He omitted entire stanzas, repeated others, and prefaced the whole thing with a few prefatory lines that he'd written himself. There was a certain amount of hubris in Beethoven's adaptation of this already famous text. The composer clearly felt that his artistic stature and his life experiences entitled him to do whatever was necessary to make Schiller's poem a suitable vehicle for his own musical thought. Beethoven handles the transition from wordless to texted music through the use of instrumental recitative, or speech-like song, which he borrowed from opera. Instrumental recitative evokes declamatory speech by being in a free tempo, rhythmically irregular, with emphasis on repeated notes that suggests the succession of stressed and unstressed syllables in language. He had incorporated instrumental recitative into several of his piano sonatas, and would do so in the late string quartets he composed after this, his final symphony. So recitative provides the link between the purely instrumental parts of this symphony and the finale, with its vocal soloists and chorus. The movement starts with an eruption in the woodwinds, brass, and timpani. This is followed by instrumental recitative in the cellos and basses, which leads to brief quotations from the symphony's own first and second movements. Then, as if dismissing his own music, Beethoven has the baritone soloist enter with more recitative, this time the usual kind with words. Specifically Beethoven's, not Schiller's words. Oh friends, not these tones, rather let us raise our voices in more pleasing and more joyful sounds. The chorus responds with shouts of joy, Freude, thus launching a series of variations on the well-known Ode to Joy tune. The variations become more and more loosely based on the theme, creating a sense of ascent to one of the largest, most triumphant climaxes in all of music. When I first heard this symphony as a teenager, knowing no German, it actually thrilled me not understanding what was being sung. I felt that Beethoven's music was telling me what the words could not. But since then, I've come to really appreciate the kind of ecstatic rant that Beethoven created from Schiller's Ode. Here are some of its key images and ideas. Joy, beautiful spark of the gods, daughter of Elysium, heavenly one, we enter your sanctuary, drunk with fire. Your magic reunites what customs strictly divided. All men become brothers. And later, be embraced, O millions, this kiss for the whole world. Brothers, above the starry canopy must a loving Father dwell. Do you bow down, millions? Do you sense the Creator, world? Seek him beyond the starry canopy, beyond the stars must he dwell. This is a glorious kitchen sink of a symphony, expanding the boundaries of its medium in ways that would have enormous repercussions throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. It brings to mind Walt Whitman's urge to include all of American life, high and low, in his verse. Do I contradict myself? Very well, but I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. This is Beethoven's Song of Myself. And now please welcome the LSU Symphony and Choral Ensembles in Beethoven's Symphony No. 9 in D minor, Opus 125. Please enjoy.